Hey guys, Mo here, and I'm really excited because I'm taking a look at the NVIDIA Jetson Nano 2GB model. So previously, NVIDIA released its 4GB Jetson Nano board, and that is priced at $100. And the 2GB model clocks in at $59, so about the same price as you'd pay for a Raspberry Pi 4. And it features pretty much the exact same feature set of the 4GB predecessor with a few notable differences. So the most obvious is that instead of 4 gigs of RAM, you're going to find 2 gigs on board the appropriately named 2GB model. Another, of course, is the price. At under $60, this thing is just ridiculously well priced. It's a great value board, especially for anyone who's interested in robotics. Aside from RAM and price, there are a couple other differences in the Jetson Nano 4GB and 2GB dev kits. So the 2GB model does away with the DisplayPort and instead just has an HDMI output, whereas the 4GB model does have both HDMI and DisplayPort. You also won't have a second CSI camera connector or an M.2 slot, and you miss out on one USB port. Additionally, the 4GB model has 4 USB 3.0 ports, whereas the Jetson Nano 2GB features 3 USB ports that are 2.0 and 1 USB 3.0. Where this thing really shines, though, is the computing power. So you're going to find a 128-core NVIDIA Maxwell GPU, as well as a quad-core ARM A57 CPU. And you'll find 2 gigs of LPDDR4, as well as a micro SD card slot. So you can encode videos at 4K 30, and you can decode videos at 4K 60. There is gigabit Ethernet built in, and although there's not Wi-Fi or Bluetooth built into the device itself, you can add a USB Wi-Fi dongle, and actually my Jetson Nano dev kit came with one in the box, and it worked right out of the box, no problems at all. There's USB-C for power delivery too, so I was able just to use a standard Raspberry Pi 4 USB-C wall adapter, and that worked just fine. Additional connectivity includes a 40-pin GPIO header, so this thing is just ridiculously well spec'd. And for the operating system, NVIDIA offers a version of Ubuntu that works incredibly well. So I was able to flash this to a 64GB micro SD card, pop it in my Jetson Nano, and I was up and running in just a matter of minutes. It was a pretty standard fare of just getting connected to my Wi-Fi and entering a username and a password, and then I was ready to go. So there is this beautiful NVIDIA logo background, which I liked, and there is a decent amount of pre-installed software, although there's nothing that really bogs down the system. It's all just standard software that you'd find in most desktop Linux distros. And if you've used pretty much any Debian-based or Ubuntu-based Linux operating system, then you're going to find a very familiar experience. So you'll find just some basic accessories and various programs, including the complete LibreOffice suite. So if you want to use this thing as just a basic desktop for productivity, it can work pretty well for that. Although the CPU and GPU are pretty strong, the 2 gigs of RAM might prove a bit limited for some intense multitasking. Since the Jetson Nano 2GB model has 128 CUDA cores, what you can do is run a bunch of different models and simulations and take advantage of that on-device computing power. And so here I'm taking a look at the Ocean FFT simulation, and what this does is it lets you zoom in and pan around and take a look at this live model of ocean height. And it's really cool. It's kind of a basic demo, but it gives you a good sense of just the sheer GPU computing power that this board has and will allow you to take advantage of. Because I think that's really where this board is going to impress a lot of makers, is its ability to run GPU intensive applications straight on the device instead of having to use some kind of cloud-based provider or some sort of add-on like a USB accelerator. Instead, you can just run various machine learning and artificial intelligence or GPU intensive modeling programs straight on the device. And that's kind of cool, especially for one that is, priced at just $59. I was really pleased to see that video playback from YouTube works incredibly well on the Jetson Nano 2GB. And I was even able to go into full screen and it worked just fine. Although the Jetson Nano is really a single board computer intended for some more maker-oriented applications like robotics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence applications, a lot of people are probably going to have questions about how well it holds up for multimedia playback. I found that local files played really well, and streaming from YouTube was great. I was also very pleasantly surprised to see that streaming from my Plex media server was absolutely phenomenal. Now, the one thing is, if you're looking to set up a server, you probably won't want to use the Jetson Nano for that, because while it does have a really strong GPU, the CPU, while it's no slouch, is actually less powerful than what you'll find in a Raspberry Pi 4. And since media streaming for a server is more CPU intensive, you'll actually get better performance with a Raspberry Pi, for instance, than you would with the Jetson Nano. And I was even able to go into full screen at 1080p, and this playback is just fine. Another area that a lot of people are probably going to wonder about is video game performance. And let's get one thing straight. The Jetson Nano is not a single board computer built for gaming. But nevertheless, one of the biggest questions that a lot of gamers, myself included, often ask is, can it game? And I was really shocked to see how well the Jetson Nano performed, especially considering that a lot of the emulators that you can run on this thing are not optimized for it. So I was able to install Dolphin, and I was able to get Luigi's Mansion and some other GameCube titles up and running. And performance was actually pretty good. It was very playable. Still, if you are interested in gaming primarily, you're probably going to want to pick up either another single board computer like the Raspberry Pi 4. If you can splurge for it, go with the UD Bolt. Or even, I would highly recommend just a basic desktop, get an old Optiplex PC or something like that and throw a decent GPU in it. Or the NVIDIA Shield TV is a great device. But let's take a look at some Dolphin performance. So there you have it. This is the NVIDIA Jetson Nano 2GB model. And I gotta say, I think this is one of the best single board computers ever released, especially for anyone who's interested in artificial intelligence, like machine learning or robotics. This is a phenomenal pickup. And at $59, it's really a compelling purchase. And it's kind of a no brainer, even if you think you're just mildly interested in getting hands on with some of those applications. This is such an affordable price point that even if you pick it up and only use it a handful of times, you've gotten your money's worth out of it. But for anyone who is a student or even teachers, I think this is a great board to add to your collection. And what's most impressive to me about it is the way that it can run a lot of these GPU intensive applications just straight on the device. It makes a few different compromises, such as going with a slightly less powerful CPU than you'd find in comparably priced single board computers like the Raspberry Pi 4. But unlike the Pi 4, this thing doesn't require any sort of USB accelerator for machine learning and artificial intelligence. You can just kind of run all of those applications straight on the device. And then the other area that I think makes this board just really an absolute powerhouse is just the level of support that NVIDIA offers. So as someone who uses single board computers and microcontrollers quite frequently, I was really familiar with the board itself from a hardware perspective and a software perspective, being a big Linux guy, but I haven't really dabbled with a lot of artificial intelligence, and I was able to spin up a number of demos from kind of connecting a USB webcam and being able to do some object recognition to just kind of installing some of those CUDA samples and demos and seeing the capabilities of this board for myself. So there are a lot of demos and tutorials that NVIDIA offers. So there's great first-party support, but then since these boards are so popular, there's excellent third-party support from the community as well. So I think this is an awesome board for anyone who's a beginner. It really lowers the learning curve and makes getting started pretty simple, but it's also a phenomenal device for more seasoned and advanced makers as well. So I think the verdict, definitely buy this board. Even if you've already got a 4 gig Nano, I think the 2 gig one can be a great option as well, just for kind of playing around with and tinkering. One area that, as a gamer, I would like to see some better support is maybe some third-party emulation operating systems, and I think an Android image for this would be great to see from the community as well. But overall, I'm super happy with this board, and I'm excited to keep playing with it. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and don't forget to give your life a tech up.